Any other questions?
Even though the global regulation of the air is not effective, but they will keep doing that because it's the part of their job, then how should they change the...
Who do you, sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Do you refer to they? Who are they?
Like global group, like American government.
American what?
Government, like government.
So you are referring to America in particular. And so the question is what
So they are like...
Americans are no, I mean just kind of be
Global institutions.
Yeah, global institutions.
global institutions. What? Okay. So
Make policy about global regulation about the air, or like,
if they can make or if they cannot make.
you said that nowadays policy is about the global scale, but it has to be smaller to be more effective, because the policy has to be in more local scale. Then, but they are like global institution will keep making policy about the air pollution or other regulations. Then how should they change those to be better?
How should they, I mean, is your question whether these kind of global institutions that are negotiating or thinking on a global scale, how can they become more sensitive to local processes? Is that the question? I don't know. I believe that there are different scales of agency. So there are agencies that operate on a global scale, like for example, setting up the parameters for air quality, for acceptable air quality in cities. I don't see why that should be affected, or setting up the carbon emissions per capita. Why shouldn't a global organization being able to set up this for everybody? So Chinese, Americans, Koreans, Europeans, everybody has to comply with a certain regulation about carbon emissions per capita. And that should be a global regulation. If everybody complies with that, then everybody will will trust and will contribute to that planetary process. If there is nobody who is able to set up these global parameters, then what I was saying before, why would Koreans reduce their carbon emissions below a certain level when they have China next door, who is like, consuming huge amounts of energy and producing huge amounts of carbon emissions that block that basically produce greenhouse effects for everybody. So that there are certain agencies there are certain processes that require that kind of global agency, and there are others that necessarily cannot be. I mean, like you cannot apply the urban policies of Hong Kong to Dubai, because they are entirely different climates. So there needs to be local organizations that are setting up urban policies for how to place buildings or what should be the ratio of the facade ratio of buildings and so on and so forth. There are simply different agencies, different.
Yeah. I mean, to kind of summarize that is kind of what we think of like think global, act local. Is that this discussion that like talks about like thinking globally or like how policy changes or how policy controls air, like when not everyone signs up for the agreements, like America said no, well there's no sanctions for it, right? And China says, oh, we're not going to follow, there's no sanctions. But still, as an architect, we can think and be aware of this, but we're not acting as a policymaker. You cannot make China agree to the carbon emission, but what you can do as an architect is that you can apply design principles that increases the microclimate and the microenvironment for that, and essentially that's kind of what we're talking about, like thinking as a globe, but still we have to act what we can act, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
think global, act local is like a kind of still a very
It's
important statement. But unfortunately, we, like everybody is now acting, becoming isolationist.
Yeah.
I mean, like the thing of MAGA and so on, or China going, or Russia invading somebody else, it's like, it's kind of, I mean, this is why I say I'm still a globalist. I believe that there should be an international order and should be enforced, and whoever doesn't comply should be punished. On every level. I mean, can talk about quite compromising issues here.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the past, like, I guess 20 years politically, it's been becoming more localized thinking.
Well, I mean, there are many people who are saying that we live in the post-global era now. That after the global crisis, basically the whole, and in many ways, what happened during COVID was very interesting. I mean, COVID was interesting in another reason, which in another sense, which is that it revealed that the global supply chains were not working. So China